The marble floor gleamed like a mirror, catching the reflection of Adrian Vale as he strode down the private hallway of Vale Enterprises. His shoes clicked with sharp authority, his custom suit tailored to perfection. Assistants trailed behind, whispering about quarterly reports and investor meetings, but Adrian's mind was already somewhere else, an impatient rhythm drumming in his chest. He thrived on power, speed, and control. Anything beneath that orbit was irrelevant. Until a sound stopped him. It wasn't the hush of air vents or the muted shuffle of papers. It was a voice. Light, untrained, yet steady. Someone was singing down the service corridor, words tumbling out soft and careless, accompanied by the faint crackle of a battered cassette player. Adrian frowned. Staff weren't supposed to linger, let alone sing. Curiosity tugged at him, against his better judgment, and he slipped away from his entourage. He followed the music, pushing through a side door into the dimly lit cleaning supply hall. There she was, a young woman in a faded uniform, hair tied messily back, crouched by a mop bucket. A cassette player, its cover scratched and taped at the corner, sat on the floor beside her. She hummed along, unaware she had an audience, her eyes closed like the music was pulling her somewhere else. Adrian leaned on the doorframe, amused. That's bold. Did they pay you to sing to the mops? She jumped, almost spilling the bucket, before steadying herself. Her eyes narrowed when she recognized him. Everyone knew Adrian Vale. His face had graced magazines, news feeds, gossip columns. Billionaire, ruthless negotiator, untouchable. And do they pay you to scare people in hallways? She shot back. Her voice was sharper than he expected, more spine than most of his executives. A smirk curved his lips. Scaring people comes free with the job description. He tilted his head toward the cassette player. That thing still works. She picked it up protectively, brushing dust from it. It works better than most things in this building. You wouldn't understand. Try me. Her chin lifted, defiance flashing in her gaze. For a second, silence stretched between them, broken only by the hiss of the tape. Then, without meaning to, she blurted, "Play, and I'll marry you." The words hung in the air like smoke, ridiculous and impossible. Adrian blinked, then laughed, loud, rich, almost cruel. Marry me, because of a cassette player. He shook his head, his laughter bouncing against the narrow walls. That's the most absurd thing I've heard all week. But her face didn't falter. You asked me to explain. Music isn't about money or power. If you can play, if you can actually make music, you're human like the rest of us. That's all I meant. The air shifted. Adrian's laughter tapered, though his smirk remained. Something in her voice unsettled him. He had been mocked before, challenged before, but this wasn't mockery. It was a dare, tossed casually from a cleaner who had nothing to lose. What's your name? He asked finally. She hesitated. Maya. Well, Maya, he said, straightening his cuffs, I don't play. I build empires. I leave the singing to the dreamers. He turned to leave, but paused, his eyes drifting back to the cassette player. For the briefest moment, the warble of the melody stirred something faint in his chest, something he thought long buried. But he shoved it aside. Keep your music, he muttered, walking away with long strides, his laughter echoing one last time down the corridor. Maya watched him disappear, her jaw set. She hadn't meant to say it. The words had just slipped out, like the music itself had pulled them from her. Still, she didn't regret them. Because for a heartbeat, she had seen something flicker in Adrian's eyes, something real, and she knew, deep down, that her song had reached him, even if he'd never admit it. Adrian Vale was not the kind of man who entertained stray thoughts. His life was ruled by numbers, contracts, and precise schedules. Yet, the following morning, as he sat in the penthouse boardroom surrounded by leather chairs and digital screens flashing projections, his mind kept drifting back to the echo of a voice in a cleaning corridor. That ridiculous challenge, play, and I'll marry you, had stuck like a burr in his thoughts. He leaned back in his chair, half listening as his CFO droned on about investor sentiment. The melody from the cassette lingered in his head, soft and stubborn, like the shadow of a memory he couldn't name. It irritated him, this intrusion. He prided himself on being untouchable, immune to distraction. Yet here he was, wondering about a woman whose name he shouldn't even remember. Maya, he murmured under his breath. What was that, Mr. Vale? Asked the CFO, startled. Nothing, Adrian snapped, straightening. Continue. But he didn't hear another word. That evening, instead of heading home to his sleek, empty apartment, he found himself wandering back through the service hallways. He told himself he was inspecting the building, ensuring discipline among the staff. Yet his steps slowed when he heard the faint crackle of a cassette player again. Maya was there, kneeling on the marble floor with a bucket beside her, scrubbing stubborn stains. She was humming as she worked, sleeves rolled up, hair escaping from its tie. She didn't notice him until his shadow fell across her. Her eyes narrowed. You again, don't you have an empire to run? He crossed his arms, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Funny, I was about to ask if you've auditioned for a record deal yet. She sat back on her heels and gave him a look that was equal parts suspicion and amusement. Mock all you want, but music's the one thing that doesn't lie. It tells the truth, whether people like it or not. Truth, Adrian scoffed. Truth is negotiable. Contracts, deals, politics, that's reality. Music is just noise that makes people feel things they can't afford to feel. Maya tilted her head, studying him. You sound like someone who's afraid of it. The words hit harder than she knew. Adrian's jaw tightened. He wanted to dismiss her, to turn on his heel and leave, but instead he gestured at the cassette player. What's so special about that old thing? Surely you can afford something newer. She picked it up carefully, as if it were fragile glass. It was my mother's. She used to play it every night when I was a kid. When she died, it was all I had left of her. So yeah, it's special. For a moment, her voice softened into something Adrian didn't know how to touch. The air between them shifted, charged with something raw. He found himself staring, as if the more he looked, the less he understood why he couldn't walk away. Play me something, he said suddenly, surprising even himself. Her brows lifted. Why? So you can laugh again? No, he said quietly. His tone stripped of arrogance for once. Just play. She hesitated, then slipped in a tape, pressing the worn button with her thumb. The player crackled to life, and a low melody filled the hall. Maya closed her eyes, her voice rising soft and clear, threading through the static. It wasn't polished, not trained, but it was alive, warm and unflinching. Adrian stood frozen, listening. Against his will, something stirred inside him, a memory of sitting in a dark room as a boy, someone's voice singing the same tune, promising safety that never lasted. He clenched his fists, pushing the memory back. When the song ended, he forced a smirk onto his lips, though it felt brittle. Not bad. For a cleaner. Maya set the player down, unfazed. For someone who claims music is just noise, you looked like it hit you pretty hard. He didn't answer. Couldn't. Instead, he turned abruptly, muttering, "Don't be late for your shift tomorrow," and walked away, his chest tight with something he refused to name. Maya watched him leave, her lips curling into the faintest smile. For all his walls and wealth, she had seen it again, the flicker in his eyes when the music reached him. And she knew this was only the beginning. Rain pattered against the tall glass windows of Vale Enterprises, streaking the view of the city with silver trails. Inside, the building buzzed with nervous energy. Word had spread like wildfire through the staff. Adrian Vale, the untouchable billionaire, had been spotted lingering in the service halls, twice. Whispers floated between cleaners, receptionists, even junior executives. Everyone speculated about the woman who had caught his attention. Maya felt the stares more than she heard the whispers. As she wheeled her cart down the corridor, conversations cut short. Heads tilted. A mixture of pity and curiosity clung to her. She wasn't used to being noticed. In fact, she preferred invisibility. But now, she was a target of attention she neither wanted nor asked for. When she stepped into the lobby to polish the brass fixtures, she froze. Adrian was there, surrounded by reporters and cameras. His PR team flanked him like bodyguards, their voices sharp with rehearsed confidence. Questions flew through the air, mergers, politics, partnerships, but then someone shouted. "Mr. Vale, care to comment on the rumor that you've been spending your evenings with a cleaner?" The lobby went still. The question sliced through the noise like a blade. Maya's hand faltered on the brass, her rag trembling. Adrian didn't flinch outwardly, though a flicker passed through his eyes. "Rumors," he said coolly, "are what people spread when they're desperate for a headline." Next question. Laughter rippled among the journalists, but the seed had been planted. By the time the cameras left, the story would already be written. Adrian Vale and the cleaner. Later that evening, when most of the staff had gone, Maya found herself back in the quiet hallway where it had all begun. She was scrubbing the same floor, as though repetition could erase the memory of what she'd just heard. Footsteps approached. She knew them instantly. "You've made me famous," she muttered without looking up. Adrian stopped beside her, his expression unreadable. I didn't ask for the press to get involved. You didn't deny it either, she shot back, standing and meeting his gaze. Her eyes burned with something fierce. Do you have any idea what this means for me? I'm not some rich man who can laugh it off. People are already whispering, calling me names. I could lose this job. His jaw tightened. You think I wanted this? You think I enjoy being asked about you, in front of cameras? Her eyes narrowed. About me? You make it sound like I'm some stain you can't wash out. The words stung him more than he expected. He glanced away, struggling with the coil of emotions rising in his chest. Shame, anger, something else he dared not name. Finally, he said quietly, play me that song again. Maya blinked. What? The one from the other night. Play it. She crossed her arms. Why? So you can pretend you're interested for a few minutes before going back to your empire. No, he said, almost desperately. His voice dropped, stripped of its usual command. Because I need to hear it. The cassette player sat on her cart, old and battered, but when she pressed play, the melody filled the hallway once more. Her voice joined it, soft and steady, carrying through the silence. Adrian closed his eyes. The sound dug deeper this time, unearthing fragments of a boy sitting on a wooden floor, listening to his mother hum the same tune before she disappeared from his life. It was a memory he had buried under wealth and steel, but now it rose like a ghost. When the song ended, he opened his eyes, and for the first time, the mask was gone. He looked at Maya not as a billionaire, not as an employer, but as a man standing unguarded. That song, he said hoarsely, was the only thing that kept me alive as a child. I thought I'd forgotten it. Maya's breath caught. Her defiance softened, replaced with something gentler. Then maybe you didn't come back here for me. Maybe you came back for yourself. Adrian didn't reply, but in his silence, in the rawness of his gaze, the truth was louder than any words. The ballroom shimmered with light, chandeliers casting golden reflections on crystal glasses and polished marble floors. It was a charity gala, one of Adrian Vale's signature events, designed to impress donors, sway investors, and remind the city of his unshakable influence. Cameras flashed, reporters jotted notes, and guests in tuxedos and gowns circulated like they were gliding across a chessboard. Adrian stood at the center, every inch the billionaire host, but inside, he was fractured. For days, the melody of Maya's song had haunted him. Her voice had stripped him of his armor, exposed a wound he thought he'd buried forever. Now, standing here surrounded by wealth and power, he felt more hollow than ever. Then he saw her, Maya, in her simple cleaner's uniform, pushing a cart along the far edge of the room. She wasn't meant to be here tonight, not in this spotlighted world of sequins and champagne. Yet her presence drew his gaze instantly, as if the crowded ballroom dimmed around her. The whispers began again. That's her, the cleaner. Why is she here? Maya kept her head high, refusing to shrink under their stares. She hadn't come for him, she'd come because her supervisor had assigned her to the event. But fate had a cruel way of forcing them together. Adrian excused himself from a circle of donors and crossed the room. The chatter dimmed as guests leaned in, hungry for scandal. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly, though his tone lacked conviction. Her eyes met his, steady and calm. I didn't ask to be. But I'm not going to hide, Adrian. Not for you, not for anyone. The words hit him like a blow. For years, he had hidden behind power and pretense. But here she was, unafraid, refusing to shrink even when the whole room was against her. Something inside him broke open. A reporter's voice rang out. Mr. Vale, care to comment on your relationship with her? Adrian turned, the cameras glaring like interrogation lights. His PR team signaled desperately, urging him to walk away, to control the narrative. For a split second, the old Adrian, cold, calculating, considered it. But then he remembered the boy he once was, clinging to a melody in the dark. He remembered Maya's voice, her defiance, her truth. He stepped forward. Yes, he said firmly, his voice carrying across the ballroom. I'll comment. The crowd fell silent. I've spent my life building walls of glass and steel, convincing the world I didn't need anyone. But the truth is, his gaze found Maya's, steady and unwavering. This woman reminded me what it means to be human. She reminded me that music, love, and honesty matter more than reputation or wealth. And I won't stand here and pretend otherwise. Gasps rippled. His PR team nearly collapsed. But Adrian didn't care. He extended his hand toward Maya. If she'll have me, I'd rather be mocked for loving her than praised for hiding it. Maya froze. For a moment, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Then she set down her cleaning rag, walked past the stairs and whispers, and placed her hand in his. "Only if you promise," she whispered, "that this isn't a bet anymore. No more games." His voice cracked with sincerity. "No more games. Just us." The ballroom erupted, half in applause, half in outrage, but none of it mattered. Adrian drew her close, not caring about cameras or consequences. For the first time in his life, he had chosen vulnerability over power, truth over image. And as the music swelled from the orchestra, Maya smiled faintly. Somewhere in the noise, she could almost hear the cassette player humming along, sealing a promise that was finally real.